entertainment. Now stepping forward, a lot of men saying that there's a good deal of gay sex abuse underway in the world of wrestling, and everybody all these years has been scared to step forward. Now come forward a number of people to say, because I wouldn't have sex with another guy in the game, I couldn't get promoted, including three, honestly, some... Well, listen, while you're laughing, this has been a not-so-funny issue for women. Now we have a casting couch, essentially, alleged, in the wrestling game, and some guys are saying, I lost my job because I wouldn't do this to this guy who was higher, more powerful than me on the ladder. And before you think this is trivial, first of all, let's understand that a couple of these charges involve kids. 14 years old, juveniles. You go to jail for a long time if you're involved with sex of any kind with a juvenile. One more point. The Wrestling Federation, you know how you tee-hee, ha-ha, what a joke, hoo-hoo, $1.7 billion in 1990. That's more revenue that has been generated by the NFL. So while you're laughing, somebody is whistling all the way to the bank. We have three people who used to be in the wrestling game who are going to tell you that they indeed encountered people who wanted sexual favors, and they were professionally penalized when they said no. And if you think the WWF is hiding behind lawyers, here is the head of that organization, who has accepted, incidentally, recently, resignations from two executives who stand accused of gay sexual harassment. He'll have a prepared statement. First, let's get the charges underway here. Gentlemen, Murray Hodgson, hired by Vince McMahon, here on my left, for the TV job. You were the commentator. And then fired 2 months later. What happened? Can you specifically, and without taking us around the world, tell us, what is it that happened to you?
I wouldn't sleep with the vice president of operations, so they fired me.
Is the vice president of operations one of those who resigned?
Yes, he is.
And do you want to name him?
I don't think that'd be necessary.
What did you announce? Did you do any color for any telecasts?
Yes.
About how long did you do the color?
Oh, I started for about a month. They hired me for a 2-year deal, and it just went right out the window when I decided that I didn't want to sleep with the vice president.
Was there any touching? Was there any kind of vulgar locker room activity? We're trying to be specific here, Murray, as a court of law would oblige any person to be of any gender.
It was a little worse than that. He blatantly threatened my job security.
He didn't say sleep with me, did he? Is that the way men talk?
I don't think this is the proper forum to be
I agree
discussing
with
the
you, and I appreciate
details.
very much you're bringing a certain amount of decorum to this. This is a daytime television show, and we don't want to draw any dirty pictures. Did it happen more than once?
No.
Just once?
Yeah.
And then how long after you said no were you dismissed?
Just a couple of weeks.
Barry Orton. Here's Barry O, the former professional wrestler, who you think you lost your job with the WWF after refusing similarly.
Actually, no, I've never actually said that. Okay, that's something that the media has come out, and with the stories that I've given, they have kind of turned it around to where I've said that. I've never said that. However, I had encounters with two of the gentlemen that have resigned since the allegations began. And these incidents, of course, happened in 1978, which is a long time ago. However, the impact and the gravity of the situations are very severe. And, you know, if they were behaving that way then, and, you know, they would be behaving that way now, I would expect.
No laugh here. You accuse an executive of grabbing your crotch, legs, and chest and wouldn't stop.
Yeah, well, I was in between the two of them in the back seat of the car on a trip.
You were in the center.
Right.
And you thought it to be a place where a junior guy has to sit.
Pretty much,
This would be early 80s?
This was 1978.
78.
Right.
So this is before the billion-dollar Wrestling Mania pay TV Hulk Hogan
yes.
era. And you had to drive, you know, you guys weren't weren't walking in money then.
Right, and everyone, you know, the more people in the car, the better, because everyone would split the expenses and keep their travel.
And then don't you saying that you got out of the car and said, not me, and...
Oh, yeah, you know, it went on for several minutes. I finally demanded that the car be... At first, I thought it was kind of funny that they were joking, but then it became, you know, harassment.
Right. Barry, it would be hard for a jury to feel a whole lot of sympathy for a guy of your size, you know what I mean? A helpless woman you're not. How old were you when this transpired?
19 years old. Probably about 35 pounds lighter.
And also probably not altogether together in your head, like a lot of 19-year-olds. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely not. You know, and I was trying to be accepted into, you know, into the business. Yeah. I was young, I was green.
And you got the big dream ahead of you. Maybe you're going to be the big guy. And there was money if you got on the main card.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're following your dream, and I suppose you want us to know, among other things, that when a couple of guys in the game, executive types, come on to you like that, and you're 19 years old, you may, you know, you may be a little hesitant to tee them off.
Of course. You know, and so I endured it for as long as I could until it became, you know, I started feeling suffocated or, you know, and I couldn't take it anymore.
Tom Hankins, you're likewise a pro wrestler. What's your story, Tom?
Well, I'm a former pro wrestler. I got out of the business about 4 years ago, but back in 1985 in Los Angeles, California, at the University Hilton Hotel, after the WWF had run a card at the sports arena, I was sitting at a bar with, I guess, can I name these people?
Sure, go ahead.
With Pat Patterson, Andre the Giant, Dr. Jerry Graham, and Mike LaBelle. He was a Los Angeles promoter at the time, or a former promoter in Los Angeles.
Right.
And we sat there drinking maybe for an hour or so. I was talking to Pat. I'd known Pat for maybe 6 months. I knew he was gay, but, you know, it didn't matter to me if he was gay or not. And I knew he was actually kind of running the shows in L.A. at the time. I don't believe he was in position as the booker yet. And I asked him...
Let me interrupt to say that he is one of the executives who has resigned.
Right.
Very good, sir.
And I asked him what was the chance of using me to do jobs, which means I was a loser. I'm not real big. I never made a lot of money in the business. I didn't really expect to go in the WWF, make a lot of money. But
you wanted to be in the game.
Yeah, I loved the business. I started out, I worked for $10 a night sometimes in Tennessee, just to wrestle, just to be in the business.
Right.
At the time, in '85, I was wrestling in Hawaii and Mexico and Southern California. So I asked Pat for, you know, if he'd give me a shot or at least a tryout. He said, well, you got 2 chances, slim and none. He goes, well, there is one way. And he wanted me to come up to the room with him and have oral sex with him. And I said, oh, I'm not interested. And after that, I went to the next show they had at the sports arena. Went down to the dressing room where they'd always let me, you know, I was in the dressing room, friends with a lot of the other wrestlers there. And Pat had me physically thrown out after that, acted like he didn't know me.
Right. What brings you forward now, gentlemen?
Actually, I came forward because when Vince said Barry's charges were ridiculous, it was just, I knew it was something that went on in the business, and anybody in this business really knew about it, knew what was going on with Patterson.
So this is like this is a feature of this culture that has been underway for a long time. And because it often involves near jobless, vulnerable young males who wanted to be either in the game or on the card, they'd back up and nobody wanted to blow any whistles. And I think, if I may, this also should be said, you didn't get a lot of press scrutiny. Nobody took you seriously anyway. Mainstream sports press today doesn't. And Mushnick of the New York Post writes a piece, Phil Mushnick of the New York Post, his lead last week, the billion-dollar pro wrestling empire is about to be shaken to its foundations by a teenage boy scandal, the Post has learned. All right, here's part of the story then, and Mr. McMahon, sir, you are the boss. You are what we would call in my neighborhood, when we were growing up, a successful big shot. This is some operation you have. Over $1 billion in annual revenue. You have, throughout the 80s, taken this thing that so many people snicker at. You have filled the Pontiac Superdome with the help of Hulk Hogan and an occasional theatrical idea that included Cyndi Lauper and the marriage of kind of pop music with this through the roof. Through the roof. The PGA should pray for these kinds of revenues. And now, here you are being accused, Mr. McMahon, of presiding over an organization that looked the other way while these sex harassment charges were being, sex harassment activity was taking place. Sir, you wanted to say.
We've never looked the other way. in anything. And I'm very happy to confront everyone today with whatever allegation they have. The three individuals about whom most of these allegations are hurled are no longer with the WWF. We have started an independent investigation on our own to get to the bottom of all of this, and that's why we're here today, is to get to the bottom of it. We may even learn something here today that my investigators do not know. I want to get to the bottom of it just like you gentlemen do.
What would you like to say to him? Anybody?
I'd like to say that it's about time because up until now you've been animately denying that not only that this is taking place, but that, and you're saying that you knew nothing of it, and I just find that really difficult to believe.
Well, there's no reason. How do you find it difficult to believe that I knew nothing of it? Why would I condone this kind of activity and risk this alleged kind of revenue?
Because, Vince, because you are the king of an empire, and you have eyes and ears everywhere, and it is so common, at least the topic of conversation for 3 to 5 minutes every night in the dressing room, because a lot of the guys, they have to put up with it, and they hate it, because if they say anything, they're out of a job.
I don't believe that to be the case, but there may be some of it. If that's the case, then let's get to the bottom of it. I'm anxious to learn, just as you are.
Well, this
I want a wholesome organization. I want an organization that everyone can be proud of. I want to get to the bottom of it, just like you do.
This happened to me. I tried to call. I called the WWF offices. You were always in a meeting. They took my number, said you'd return my call. But, you didn't want to talk to me, basically. And I'm sure at the time you didn't know who I was, didn't know what I had to say. But, I tried to explain it to whoever I talked to, and I called. And, they didn't want to...
This was when, sir?
1985.
I don't recall the telephone
Has
call.
there been any lawsuit?
Do you believe that sexual harassment exists in your workplace?
I believe that there's a possibility of sexual harassment existing everywhere. And
I asked directly if it was at the World Wrestling Federation.
And I don't want it in my organization. I don't want it.
I'd like to reiterate the question. Do you believe there is sexual harassment amongst the wrestlers or employees at the World Wrestling Federation today?
There is a possibility of that. That's why I have these independent investigators to come in.
And who are these independent investigators?
Fairfax Group Limited. And I would like, to hear what you have to say, and everyone has to say. I want to get to the bottom of it.
Would you therefore believe that because of all these allegations coming forward and more corroborating evidence proving that there's no doubt sexual harassment is running rampant in the World Wrestling Federation, that you are definitely going to come public and do something about it?
Why wouldn't I? If in fact that is the case, why wouldn't I do something about it? Why would I risk what we have?
Because you haven't done anything about it until it became public, because you thought it was under the water.
Because I had no knowledge of it.
I made knowledge of it to you when I was fired, and you just blew it off and let me go. I retained a lawyer.
Because you were not very good. You were not a very good announcer. You could not. That's the only reason why you were fired. You could not make the transition from radio to television. That is the only reason why you were fired.
I would like to remind you, sir, that I have a 2-year contract. 2 years.
You also have a clause in your contract that states, and as you know, you were hired on a trial basis.
I was not hired on a trial basis.
You do not have a contract?
Mr. McMahon, I have a 2-year deal with your firm.
In that contract, you will note, in a clause, it states very clearly, and I have it outlined for all to see here today, that you can be fired almost at whim, if in fact you're not doing a good job. You did a horrible job. That's the only reason why you were fired. That's it.
Maybe I should point out, first and foremost, that might be your inability to pick good talent.
It could be.
You had a national talent search, Vince McMahon.
Could be.
You advertised in Billboard magazine and across many different media sources searching for one man that could be the new face and voice of the World Wrestling Federation. You flew me in back and forth 4 and 5 different times from Detroit, and you chose over the course of 1 year of negotiations that I would be the man for that job. I didn't sleep with your vice president. 2 weeks later, I'm fired. I also want to point out one very important fact. From your office came a letter to my landlord to verify my employment. From that letter, I must bring this point up. It says, Murray Hodson has a very secure job with Titan Sports and is a positive and productive employee. From your office. Just because I don't sleep with your vice president, that qualifies to blow me out of a 2-year deal? I don't buy it.
Right. Well, said very well, but I believe untrue. If in fact these allegations against Pat Patterson, whom you won't name, are true, why not pursue the legal course, the legal recourse? Why not pursue?
We are doing that right now.
You are. And you are aware that you waited 6 months after you were let go to bring these homosexual charges against Pat Patterson. 6 months you waited. Why?
September 14th.
If in fact you were fired on the spot, if you were fired for incompetence, all right, why didn't you say right then, why didn't you say, hey, look, Vince, your vice president made a pass at me. You never told me that. No one had any knowledge. Human Resources had no knowledge of that. Rene Dubose was waiting to hear your story. Why did you wait 6 months? You asked me for $160,000 today, otherwise you were coming on this program. I'm happy you're on this program.
Mr. McMahon, do not try to deflect the truth here. First and foremost...
What are you asking for? How much money have you asked for?
I have never asked for any amount of money from you. You have tried to buy me off to shut up so I wouldn't come forward and tell of these allegations that's running through the World Wrestling Federation.
Your attorney should be consulted.
My attorney, on September of 1991, came forward to you with a letter addressed to you, telling you exactly what happened and that I was discharged wrongfully. I had a 2-year contract and that you, too, were well aware of the fact that there was a homosexual advance made against me. Don't tell me I waited 6 months. 3 weeks later, I was on your rear end.
3 months later?
6 weeks later.
No.
The only reason we waited a little longer was because you continued to try to negotiate to buy me out, and I wouldn't allow it.
The fact of the matter is, if you look into this man's past, the fact of the matter, if you look into your
I don't think we should bring up the past.
I guess not.
The issue at hand here, Mr. McMahon, is one thing and one thing only. You addressed on Larry King Live Friday on CNN. You went on and you said that I never worked for the World Bodybuilding Federation. I am on a video that is sold around worldwide.
True, your
my voice. So you told the country that I didn't work for the World Wrestling Federation.
You say you were a freelance and you were hired.
Well, of course not.
Right.
But you Second of all, you said you fired me. You didn't fire me. John Filippelli not only gave me the letter, but he also fired me. John felt so bad that I was being released that he allowed me to stay at his house if I wanted to and be with his family until I could find further place to live.
And that's, my friend, speaks to all of the good deeds and good people throughout the World Wrestling Federation. We're talking about 3 people here. We're talking about 3 people, and only 3 people that have brought these allegations against. We're not talking about the 300. We're not talking about all of the wrestlers and things of that nature. Let's keep some balance here.
Let me make the point that this very important conflict transpires at a time that the all-time star of the wrestling game, Hulk Hogan, felt obliged to go on the Arsenio Hall show to say, I do not use steroids, only to be followed by a number of...
I don't believe you said that, Phil, if I can...
well, he said I used it, what, 3 times?
He did admit to steroid usage.
He said 3 times. Yes. And we have now several people stepping forward to say, listen, I sent Federal Express packages. They were picked up here and there. This is not to suggest that we know the absolute answer to this. This is rather to call your attention to the fact that now some inquiry extends to Hulk Hogan. Why is that important? Because he's on just about every kind of child's toy you can buy. We're talking Hasbro here. Some of the biggest giants in the manufacturing of toys are, and the images, he's not yet Mickey Mouse, but $1 billion worth of business. How much at risk is this? And how much will the steroid controversy find its way onto the front pages or the sports pages of our newspapers? An establishment that, as we have said, has largely ignored any kind of probe of the wrestling game. We'll talk with journalists who have probed it in just a moment. Dave Meltzer. Dave, you're an editor of the Wrestling Observer, which is what, the New York Times of Wrestling?
Oh, I wouldn't say that, but...
All right, well, you might as well if I say... John Arezzi is a talk show host, a wrestling program on WEVD-AM. You guys will agree that the mainstream folks really haven't had a whole lot of time for any kind of probe or serious attention to wrestling. Isn't that so?
Well, I think that wrestling in general has never gotten its due recognition as far as its popularity.
As a business.
As
very
a business
big business.
and entertainment, both positive and negative. I think that it hasn't been given,
Yeah.
and maybe perhaps that's why a lot of things have happened.
Okay. That you mean over the years and no whistles have been blown.
Exactly.
Give me your shortest speech, Dave. What's going on here? Why is this serious? I mean, I think we know, but there is a kind of a tendency to chuckle at this. You know, the big boys are, are playing with each other is kind of ha-ha. And it isn't. It's
not at all, no.
Well, tell them why. Tell them why this is important.
There's so many different issues here, and the as far as like a criminal thing, I think hopefully everybody in this panel wants just the truth to come out, and I don't know what the truth is. We all hear different versions of a story, and we just want to hear the truth.
Very good.
So that's fine.
John, what would you add to that? Same question.
Well, the mainstream media pretty much has ignored the entire situation. They really just started jumping on it last year with allegations of steroid abuse in the World Wrestling Federation, and now they've really come alive.
And what do you think? That's what opened the door to these charges?
I think what opened the door to all these charges basically was the fact that last year, after the steroid trial of Zaharian, Vince McMahon started a steroid policy.
Dr. Zaharian, Harrisburg, PA, 3 years steroid distribution.
Right.
Yeah.
And after that trial, Mr. McMahon started a steroid policy, and during that press conference, he did not invite the wrestling media. I alerted Phil Muchnick to that, and after that, that's when certain people started calling Mr. Muchnick about other allegations.
You speak of the New York Post reporter.
Yes.
Superstar Billy Graham, I'll tell you what, he's won his share. Former pro wrestling champ. Hey, baby. Oh, they still love you, Billy. Don't tell them I had to give you a shot before the show, right in the mouth because you were disobeying my orders. Former, hey, what's not so funny, Billy? Tell them. You saw ring boys, did you, being sexually harassed?
Yes, I've seen ring boys being sexually harassed.
What's a ring boy?
A ring boy is a person who's usually employed to put up and take down a ring, travel from one town to another. Age group possibly from 13 to 19 to 20, fluctuates anywhere in between.
And you saw what?
I saw on one occasion, I believe it was New Haven, Connecticut, Pat Patterson actually grabbed one of these children, in the crotch while putting up the ring. I came to the ring a little bit early, walking by the ring to the locker room, and I saw Pat Patterson with his left arm on the kid's shoulder and his right hand in his crotch. I witnessed this for myself.
You also claim to have, you did not see the abuse of a 12-year-old boy in the car. You mentioned this on Larry King's program.
I wasn't on Larry King's program.
Weren't you? I'm sorry, Barry, I'm sorry. Sorry, you weren't. Bruno was. We'll get to Bruno in a moment. Did you see, you didn't see the abuse of a 12-year-old in a car by the ring announcer, did you?
I didn't see the actual abuse. I was there the night in Allentown, Pennsylvania, when Mel Phillips was caught in the front seat of a car with a child approximately 10 years old performing oral sexual on this child of 10 years old, brought into the arena by a security guard, confronted to Mr. McMahon, Vince Sr. and Vince Jr., and they said we would handle it.
Vince Sr., your father? Is that right, Vince?
Yes, and first of all...
Is that true?
No, I don't know if it's true or not. I can tell you that no one ever came to my dad.
What was the year this is supposed to have taken place, Billy?
About 82 or 83, I can't remember, but the main part I want to bring...
We should also make this point, Billy. These are pretty heavy bombs you're throwing
here. These are very heavy bombs,
but we don't have any proof, and I don't think you're claiming to have seen the illegal act.
Okay, I may not have seen this particular illegal act, but it has gone on for so many years. Just as the selling of drugs by Dr. George Zahorian has gone on for 15 years in the World Wrestling Federation, witnessed and condoned by Vince McMahon, you see, and condoned by him sitting this close to Dr. Zahorian while he sold steroids, while he sold barbiturates, downers and uppers to every wrestler who wanted them. You see, what I'm trying to say is the man could condone this, so he also condoned the homosexuality. He put up with the drug selling, and he put up with the homosexuality.
Identify the cast of characters here. You mentioned Mal Phillips. He is another of the executives who has resigned.
I don't believe he was an actual executive. He was a ring announcer.
Was he not? Has he not resigned from the WWF?
I believe he has resigned or been fired. I don't know which.
Is he not one of the people who has
He's one of those who is
stepped down
alleged, yes.
following the publicity about this. Yes. Nobody's been proven guilty. We should get that point. You're denying you recall anything like this, looking the other way.
Not only that, the thing of it is, why not speak up? If I saw something like that, I'd call the authorities. That's what you would do. A 10-year-old boy, you'd call the authorities. Come on. You're not going to let somebody like that get away with that. Please,
you know what? You know why? Why didn't you? Why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you speak up when you allowed Dr. George Zahorian to sell barbiturates that almost killed Rick McGraw? They were in his bloodstream when he died, along with all the.
Billy, we're all smarter now about steroids.
But wait a minute. Barbiturates, steroids, plus hardcore drugs that I had 3 overdoses with myself from Dr. Zahorian's drugs. And I tell you one thing, if my wife would have had a gun, she flushed half the drugs down the toilet. And if my wife sitting right there would have had a gun, she would have killed Dr. Zahorian. And she said if she would have had a chance, she would have killed Vince McMahon because he permitted it to happen.
Yeah, but you took him too, didn't you?
I was addicted because of the accessibility.
Yeah, well, you must have been a real crank when you were on him, too, weren't you? I mean, weren't you? I mean, doesn't it affect your personality? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
You're addicted. You're addicted.
But you're also crabby and easy to anger, aren't you? Doesn't it alter behavior and emotional? And
not if you're sedated. Not if you have barbiturates and you have Placido.
Could you compete and survive and be a top card person in the 80s in the wrestling game without taking steroids? Be honest.
No, not you would have to take steroids to in Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation to be on top.
Because it made you bigger, you look better in the poster.
And that's the market. That's the market.
We'll be back in just a moment.
Please send a postcard to Donahue Tickets, care of NBC, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York, New York, 10112. Remember, postcards only, please.
Bruno Sammartino, you did appear on the Larry King live program last week. Are you impressed with Mr. McMahon's apparent acknowledgement here on this program, which was not forthcoming on that one, that maybe there is a problem?
Some of these poor folks out there are sitting there listening to these guys, and when he makes them, they even applaud. Poor people, you don't know this man. Let me explain something to you. I wrestled from 1959 to 81, and I retired. When I came back in 84 as a color commentator, believe you me, the world of wrestling that I left and the one that I found, it was bizarre. I mean, it was filled with drugs of all kinds. We're talking about steroids, but there was cocaine. In fact, this man who pretends like he wasn't aware, why didn't somebody come to me? One time I had to go to Arizona, to New Mexico, different place, because one of his druggies was out of it, and I took his place, even though I really didn't care to at that stage of my life because I had retired. I specifically said to the man, hey, if I'm going to be going to these places in the arena, says I want to make sure that I don't drive with any of you wrestlers that are full of coke and whatever. So he arranged for this other old-time wrestler, Jay Strongbow, for me to travel with him because I wouldn't be in a car because I was always afraid of a car being stopped full of drugs. And he said to me, don't worry, he says, I'll get the agent to rent the car so you can go around with him.
Well, let me just say this in behalf of Mr. McMahon. First of all these charges are yet to be proven.
They're just coming up.
And I want to get to this, Bruno. Well, yeah, that's another thing. Why are they just now coming up? Let's understand this.
I can answer that question.
What is it?
There's never been a forum for them before. You have to understand that the wrestling business has always been a totally closed entity. It's almost like an elementary school. You don't snitch. You don't tell. If something happens in the business, there was a friend of mine, okay, and it has nothing to do with Vince McMahon. I don't want anyone to think it does, who was murdered in a dressing room. And it was very difficult. This was in Puerto Rico. And it was very difficult for the wrestlers, even in the murder, to go to the police the next day and tell the truth. It took one of the guys who was a friend of the guys, says, we've got to go tell the truth. And there was so much pressure on telling that, that you don't snitch.
I get it. But this point has to be made. These are men in groups.
It sure
Not unlike the New York Mets.
That's right.
Some of whose members are now under a very big, embarrassing gun of a charge brought by a woman. Just let me finish here. I guarantee you there's nobody in this audience that's going to drop over of indignation to discover that pot smoking may have taken place. That throughout the 70s and 80s, especially when the money started rolling in, cocaine started to take place. No doubt about that. And I guarantee you, this bright audience knows damn well that steroids were used. This is easy to get. We know this. Now, wait a minute. Here's the question. Did the WWF, or did the environment, Or did people in power not only look the other way, but actually condone the loss of jobs, the loss of employment, because of bold, unrestrained aggression of a sexual nature by men in power on younger men who wanted to rise within the system?
Absolutely
That's
not.
the question.
Can I answer that question, Phil?
Sure.
Last night on my radio program, I had 2 midget wrestlers on, and
We don't see him anymore, do we?
no, we don't. We don't see him
Tell him
anymore.
why.
Last night on my show, a midget wrestler by the name of Karate Kid alleged that in a dressing room, Pat Patterson made some sexual advances towards him. The leader of the midget group, Lord Littlebrook, went to Pat... No, it sounds bizarre, and it is bizarre, but it's sad.
Make the story, please. Running out of time.
Yes, okay. Lord Littlebrook went to Pat Patterson and said, leave this kid alone. He's not gay. He scared the little guy, you know, to tears. They were not used, but one time after that sexual advance was denied. They were only used one more time, and the midgets have not been used since then.
Vince McMahon. Here is the owner of the World Wrestling Federation. And he's already lost, how many? 2 or 3 executives have resigned.
2 executives and 1.
2 executives and 1 announcer.
One announcer.
Yes. Who worked right under him. What did Mr. McMahon know, and when did he know it? And is it unfair to have asked him to give these guys the heave-ho, given the complexity of these charges? Who's got the evidence? Who's going to believe who? Did he fire this and out? This is, if it weren't so painful, it'd be fascinating. We've got the boss saying to the secretary who accuses him of a sexual abuse, I fired her because she couldn't type. Maybe she couldn't type. What is the truth? We'll be back to explore it further in just a moment. Here are just some scenes from what it is that is mesmerizing millions of Americans, a lot of them young people. These pros in the wrestling game will tell you, a lot of the folks screaming the loudest in the audience are young people, males and females. Dave, you're editor of the Wrestling Observer. Do you see Mr. McMahon coming forward here to open the door, at least, to the possibility here? Are you impressed with what he has said here in the first part of our program?
It surprises me, and I'm glad he said it, because...
You're glad he said what?
I'm glad he admitted that there was a possibility, because none of us know for sure. Maybe Barry does, okay? And Murray and Tom, okay? I don't know for sure. It's one person's word against another, and maybe if the executives told Vince that this didn't happen, maybe they were telling the truth, and maybe they're not. I can't tell you for sure, although I will say this. I do believe Barry's story. He took a polygraph, and I've spent a lot of time discussing it with him, and I think that I'm pretty decent at talking to wrestlers and separating the fact from the fiction, and I believe Barry's story.
I'd like to take the time to interject
Barry, please.
here
Sir.
and say that what the big story really was not really the story where I sat between Pat Patterson and Terry Garvin, but shortly thereafter, there was another instance, and I remember I'm 19 years old, and I drove from Amarillo to Albuquerque, New Mexico, with a single passenger being Terry Garvin, who about 40 miles outside of town started proposing that he perform oral sex on me while I was driving, begging me to let him do so. And of course, because I was young, I didn't want to lose a position or a shot. And I don't have homophobia. I have no problem with, I'm a First Amendment person. I believe everyone has a right to do whatever they want to do. Right. And I told him as nicely as I could, please don't be offended, but that's not, what I'm into, and nothing personal, and, I'm still your friend, but no thanks. And he did this. Every 40 or 50 miles, he would start again, and it got harder and harder to talk him out of it.
That's horrible, but that happened.
Well, let him finish his point. And your point, Barry,
My point is that Dave Meltzer just said, I have taken a polygraph about all this stuff and came back totally clean. My point is that if he was attracted to young men and younger, because I even heard the stories of the kids underage back then.
His behavior towards you makes you wonder about how he may have behaved toward others. Is this the point?
Yeah, even now.
And you also want to know what? I mean, you can't, you don't want to get the posse and the rope and the tree limb for Vince on this, do you?
No, I don't. I don't want to get the posse and the rope for Vince. However, This has been going on in the dressing room in the WWF with, and I'm talking, you know, under Title VII of the code on the law, it says that any unwelcome sexual advances, touching, or anything else is sexual harassment.
Right.
Now, we have these guys who are bookers and top executives, and believe me, I'm out of here before they are. I know I can't go and complain. I'm sorry. Now, you can say whatever you want to say, and you know that to be true.
They have the power. No matter what you say, you're going to be dismissed.
I'm gone because they are more important than I am.
Yeah, you wanted to say, Bruno, very briefly, with all kinds of folks in this audience who haven't even had a chance. They're coming after me here. I'm going to need you in just a minute.
McMahon said, why didn't they go to the authorities? What you folks don't know is that you don't go to the authorities if you want to eat because you're merely dead. You're finished, kaput, blackballed. His father blackballed me all over the country, not for this, for some other issue.
Well, let's not bring in that.
No, I won't. I'm just talking about that there's no union, there's no protection for the wrestler.
Very good.
You speak up, you're dead.
Vince McMahon, here's the charge. You had to see this. Your agents, right under you on the organization chart, are accused. 2 of them have resigned, including an announcer. Where were you all these years? Was the money so good? Was the glamour so great? Was the business exploding so wonderfully that you didn't have time to get into this kind of thing and you looked the other way and allowed it to happen? That seems to be the way this charge is evolving against you.
Well, I certainly didn't look the other way. There's no reason for me to look the other way and risk everything that we have going for us.
You didn't know any of this was going on, Mr. McMahon?
No, I did not. What Barry is making reference to is an act some 14 years ago. 14 years ago, that happened. How am I supposed? I don't know that that happened. This is the first time hearing of it on the show the other day.
Yeah. Do you believe it?
It could very well have happened. And to that extent, if in fact it did happen, again, those individuals whom these allegations are being brought against are no longer with me. I don't know what else more I can do other than to garner as much information as I possibly can to see that if in fact some of this was going on, that it doesn't happen again.
You know, we're always going to have wrestling. The question is, how threatened now is this empire with the accusations of steroid abuse and now a gay sexual harassment? Because if it isn't, if you don't convince, obviously this is, I'm not suggesting I'm telling you something you already don't know. If you don't fix this, you're not going to be able to give these tickets away.
No question about it.
And we'll be back in a moment. People magazine is out with a page, a piece on the Incredible Hulk, Hulk Hogan. Are you acknowledging here that Billy, that you actually introduced young wrestlers to steroids?
I'm acknowledging that Hulk Hogan came to me in 1977 in Tampa, Florida, and inquired about steroids.
Right.
Because he wanted to be a wrestler.
You
and
know,
I freely
I'll tell
gave
you
him.
what.
I freely gave him this
I don't want to send him to jail for that.
No, I'm not.
1977. That's how you did it.
And we didn't know.
Him. All right.
I freely gave him that
you look back on it and you say, holy cow, that was wrong.
But the point is, I freely gave the man that information in 1977. But the fact of the matter is, now he has gone on the Arsenio Hall show and lied to a national audience that he has never taken steroids except for 3 occasions, and those 3 occasions being for therapeutic use only for a torn bicep. I've injected the man myself probably a half a dozen times. David Schultz, a close friend of mine, has injected him over 200 times, and Hulk Hogan himself has told me personally, Superstar, I knew nothing about steroids when I began.
But why?
And for the first year, I took a shot every day of my life, every day for the first year until I learned how to cycle steroids. But my point is, Phil,
Billy, you're threatening a very big income here with this information.
That's right, but you can't lie to children in this country about drugs. That's child abuse. When you get on television and you say you have never taken steroids and you've done it for the whole 10 years, and when you've taken steroids for the decade of the 80s, and when you've taken cocaine and other drugs, and you lie about this to children, that is child molestation of their minds. You can't lie to kids about drugs.
John Arezzi, you wanted to say, sir.
Didn't Vince say in published reports that you were devastated when Hulk Hogan made those statements on Arsenio?
I wasn't devastated.
That was the word you used to me. It was.
Well, all right.
It was in the
I don't recall using the word devastated. Hulk Hogan, I think, told the truth. The question is, as far as the media is concerned, is whether or not he told the whole truth.
I don't believe the truth.
And let me just say
only
this.
3 times is not the truth.
Okay, first of all, let me say this. That as you readily would recognize, Superstar, as you started this whole steroid phenomenon in undoubtedly professional wrestling, it seems to me that we're losing sight of the fact that steroids were legal at the time. I mean, it was just as legal.
Not in some states they were, and they were not legal in Florida.
Okay, federal.
But
they were legal in Florida.
The issue is,
and
you can't ask me,
they're not legal now.
and lie to children.
All right.
Taking
All right.
steroids.
And that's why we instituted our steroid
If
testing
you
program
ask
last
me,
year.
and nobody has, I don't want to string up a guy who took these football, wrestling, whatever, in the 70s or 80s before the sunshine started to come down on us about the terrible side effects of this drug.
We need the side
Your point about your accusation that he lied is a different. Hello.
Hi, to the 3 men on the end
Yes.
who lost their jobs.
Yeah.
How many people in the World Wrestling Federation today are performing sexual favors to keep their jobs?
Well, today, I would have to say I don't know because the 2 main culprits, I guess, have resigned and stepped down.
When you were working there, percentage-wise.
Well, percentage-wise, I can't really say like 30%, 50%. I know of at least one person that was there from beginning till end.
If you're not...
Hi, are you there, caller? Briefly, you had to say.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. McMahon concerning all those executives resigning. Don't you find it strange that all those accused have resigned? Why did you accept their resignations? And wasn't indeed Mel Phillips suspended?
Yes, you have one individual who's suspended who was not technically an employee, although he worked with us almost every day. And you have 2 executives who have resigned, and we've accepted their resignation.
Yeah.
You talk about child abuse, but if you saw or had knowledge of a child, a young person...
Should have blown the
being
whistle right away.
Got it.
Yeah, I guess.
Because you're...
Okay, I've got to understand something. I'd like to speak up.
You gotta understand something.
You have to understand the wrestling
By
business.
coming forward right now, I'm done, man. I'll never wrestle ever again under any circumstances. I am done.
Yeah,
But when you have a family to support and you're talking about your livelihood,
You
throwing
can
it out
take
the
care
window.
of yourself, but that man said he saw a child being abused. If that's true,
No, I
he
said
is a
when you
scumbag.
lie,
If you had
I said when you lie to children, when you lie to children, that is child abuse. That was my point. I didn't.
Bruno, you wanted to say.
I wanted to tell that young lady, please, they were reported. We told you the parking lot incident. When it was reported to them, they said, well, what they do in their own time. They didn't care. Don't you understand that? They didn't care.
First of all, I think that it's a shame that 6 of the people on the panel, with the exception of Mr. Meltzer, are sitting there accusing Mr. McMahon, who so far has done nothing wrong. Mr. O, I know you've been in jail. Mr. San Martino, your son was fired under very suspicious circumstances. How can you sit here and accuse Mr. McMahon out of personal vendettas?
None of that has any
You don't
relevance.
know what you're talking about, Sonny. When you grow up, maybe you'll understand a little bit.
I'm just wondering why people go into wrestling in the first place.
Money.
I mean, they know it's not a pure art form. Even just looking at wrestling, you can see that
what?
it's tacky and good looking.
People love this.
But you can tell it's
There's a
sleazy
market
just by
for
looking
this.
A lot
at
of
it.
people love professional wrestling.
issue here.
I got a break. Are you there, caller?
Yes.
I can't talk to you. Well, hang on. Maybe I'll get you in. We'll be back in a moment.
For a transcript of today's program, send $3 check or money order to Donahue Transcripts, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 303-831-9000.
From sexual equality to sexual harassment, are women suffering a backlash for the success of the feminist movement? Next, Donahue.
Yeah, I just like to ask one question to the wrestlers that have been in the business for a long time.
Let's go.
How many are there percentage homosexuals in wrestling
nobody knows that. How many homosexuals in your neighborhood? Report back to us on that. What did you want to say? Yes. It's a... Isn't wrestling fixed anyway?
That's not a relevant issue to any of this.
No, that's a creative decision. Who wins? The snake loses, the good guy wins. This is about crime. This is about breaking the law. Yeah, what is it? Tell them about it.
You said over here that if you blow the whistle on sexual harassment, that your career is over, you're blackballed. I just want to know, is your career worth the price of these 10 and 13-year-old boys getting harassed?
Services provided and promotional fees paid by the following.